All right, so for this game, looks like we have what is essentially just an in and out game. There's going to be a bunch of these cookbooks, and they're going to be released or published, apparently, in one of these two seasons, the fall or the spring. They do tell us, though, that every single one of these books is going to be published in one of the two seasons. So essentially, this makes it a textbook in and out setup. Every single element is going to go either in one or the other, no doubles, and nobody's going to be missing. Now, the elements themselves, we have K, L, M, and O, P, so we'll line that up accordingly. And I guess from there, let's take a look at the rules. So the first rule tells us that M and P cannot be in the same season, so I guess that's always nice. We can set up a placeholder essentially on both sides, because effectively, this means that we're going to have one of M or P on each of the two sides. Next, K and N must be in the same season as each other, so K and N effectively are going to have to be together. Now that's actually kind of powerful, isn't it? Because we already have a spot reserved on each of these two sides, and the KN, wherever they go, they're going to pretty much take up 2 extra spots. So that's going to account for quite a few of the elements already. So anyways, yeah, let's keep going. If K is in the fall, then O is also in the fall. So if we have K fall, then we'll also have to have O fall. So contraposed, if we have O spring, we'll have to have K spring as well. And again, there's a bit of an interplay here, right? Because if you put the KN block into the fall, then this will trigger, and then O will have to follow as well. The KN block is probably going to be a pretty good candidate for exhaustion because, you know, there's only 2 major possibilities, and it's kind of influential. Depending on where you put it, there will be sort of consequences. Anyways, next, if M is in the fall, then N has to go in the spring. So if we have M fall, then we'll have to have N spring. So if we have N fall, then we'll have to have M spring, which actually I suppose that also interplays with the KN block as well. So yeah, you know what, let's exhaust this. Essentially, we have 2 major plays. Either we're going to have the KN block in the fall, or we're going to have the KN block in the spring. Now, top scenario, if K is in the fall, then O is going to follow, which is great. And yeah, if N is in the fall, then M is going to have to go into the spring, so we can lock that down as well. And P, so M and P don't play nice, right? They have to be separated. So if M is over here, then P is going to have to go over there. Is that everybody? No, I think we're missing someone. K, N, L. And L doesn't have any restrictions, so L can we can just leave a reminder here that L can go either way. In the bottom scenario, so here you'll notice that this doesn't trigger any of the conditionals, right? If K is in the spring, that doesn't do anything. If N is in the spring, that doesn't do anything. So here we're a lot more open-ended. I suppose we can add our MP placeholder, so that's not too bad. But at this stage, O has 0 restrictions in this second template, and L, as usual, can still do whatever. So I suppose, let's go. The questions themselves, number 19, what is a complete setup of the game? Well, that would work. So as usual, we go by the rules. First rule tells us that M and P cannot be together. Let's see if anything violates that. And it looks like B does. Otherwise, I think we are clear. Next. Yeah, K and N have to be together. So looks like A violates that since K and N are separated. Answer choice C, D, and E have them together though. Next, if K is in the fall, so between C, D, and E, let's look for cases where K is in the fall. So that's C and D, in which case O is supposed to be in the fall as well. And it looks like answer choice C violates that. D, however, is still legit. And lastly, if M is in the fall, so between D and E, that happens in both of them, but then N is supposed to get pushed into the spring, and looks like D violates that, so we can get rid of that. And that leaves us with answer choice E as the best answer for question number 19. As usual, let's plug that into the board. So answer choice E said MO, and then everybody else, K, L, and P goes to the spring. So from there, let's take a look at the locals, question number 20. So if we have M published in the fall, well, I suppose if M is in the fall, that would just lock you into this template, right? Because in the top template, M is actually in the spring. So that's pretty good. In fact, you know what, I don't think we can do much more, but you know what, just in case, we could just plug this into the board. You have two options here. At this stage, you could just try to do this mentally and just remember that, hey, M is over here and P is over there. Or if you think that there might be further implications, or if you're uneasy doing things in your head, you could always put it into the board as well. So we can say that for this scenario, M is going to go here, K and N are going to go there, and P is going to go there. For the record, when you're practicing, try to kind of push yourself a little bit just to do a bit more mentally as much as you can. There are little things that you want to get comfortable doing in your head just because it makes you a bit more efficient with the games. Anyways, to the question itself. Which of the following is a pair of books that could be published in the fall with M? And I suppose it's just the other two, because we know that K and P are over here, so it would just be O and L who are left over. So the best answer here is answer choice C for question number 20. Next, question 21. If N goes into the fall. Now, if N's in the fall, that pretty much locks us into this template over here, because here N is obviously in the spring, and everything else is resolved. We don't have to worry about anything further. This is basically it. So the question now simply asks, which of the following could be true? K spring, and that's definitely not happening. Can we do L fall? And actually, yeah, the L could have gone either way here, right? So that could have potentially happened. So actually, to be honest, it's good enough. The best answer to question 21 is B. Just in case, though, let's take a quick look at the rest. C. M goes to the fall, and no, definitely not. M's in the spring, O's in the spring, and no, O is currently in the fall, and P is in the spring, and again, no, it's currently in the fall. Onwards. So it looks like we don't have any more locals. Let's go to, I guess, the rest of the questions in order. Question 22. The schedule for the cookbooks would be fully determined if what was true. So basically, what would lock down the game completely? Let's go. Answer choice A. K is in the fall and L is in the spring. Oh yeah, that'll take care of it, won't it? So yeah, check this out. If K is in the fall, automatically we're locked into this template, right? Because here K is obviously in the spring. So if K is in the fall, then we're locked into this scenario, and then the only variability is L. That's the only thing that we didn't really know. But according to answer choice A, L is then in the spring, so L gets locked into here, and that's everybody. That takes care of it. The best answer to question 22 is A. Just in case, though, let's take a quick look at the rest. Answer choice B. O is in the fall, and P is in the spring. Well, if O is in the fall, actually, it's worth noting that, I guess, well, no, if P is in the spring, we're going to be locked into this template over here. So if P goes into the spring, that's going to be P, and then M gets pushed over here. And according to this answer, O then goes into the fall, so O would have to go here. But L can still do whatever it wants. You'll notice that answer choice B doesn't influence L one way or another. In fact, actually, we can kind of take a bit of a shortcut with this, because it's worth noting that none of the rules influence L in any capacity, which means that if one of these answer choices does not commit L to a certain position, it can't possibly lock the game completely because L would always be variable. So yeah. Next, answer choice C. P goes to the fall and L goes into the spring. Well, if P goes in the fall, so this one, it's worth noting, is it's consistent with both possibilities, because we could have had P in the fall over here, but we also could have had P in the fall over here. So since this doesn't lock us into either of these templates, and L, of course, also could go on either side in both scenarios, since this doesn't lock you into one of these two templates, then this is still not enough to completely resolve where everything goes. Answer choice D. Both K and L are in the spring. Well, if K and L are in the spring, I suppose that would force you into the second template over here, because here obviously K is in the fall. But even if we put K and L in the spring, M and P are still going to be flexible. O is still going to be flexible, so that's not good enough. Answer choice E. Both M and L are in the fall. And if that's true, so again, that would force you into the second template, because in the top template, obviously M is in the spring. But even if M was in the fall with L in the fall, obviously P would then have to get pushed into here. But O is still flexible. O can still do whatever, because K doesn't actually influence O in this scenario, right? So that wouldn't have been good enough. Once again, the best answer to 22 is A. And just to be clear, once you had A locked down, you just run with it, right? You only check all of this if you have some extra time left over at the end, because once you can prove that A works, there's no point wasting time on the rest. Anyways, question number 23. Which of the following, if substituted for the condition that if M is in the fall, then N must be in the spring? So basically, we are trying to replace this rule over here. So the question is, what is going to have the same impact on the game? Now remember, for these modifier questions, essentially you're looking for two parameters, right? Just as a reminder, we're looking for an answer choice that always had to be true, and we're looking for an answer choice that would ensure that this restriction would exist, that anytime that M goes into the fall, then N is going to get pushed into the spring. So let's go. Answer choice A. If L is in the fall, then M would have to go in the spring. Now, this answer choice, we can get rid of it kind of off the bat just because this never had to be true. L never influenced anybody in this game. L had no implications on anyone. They could have always kind of bounced back and forth in either direction with no impact on anyone. So this never had to be true. If L was in the fall, that didn't force M to go into the spring. It wouldn't have forced anything at all. So A is out. Answer choice B. If N is in the fall, then P is in the fall as well. Now, if we say that if N is in the fall, then it would force P to go into the fall. Oh, actually, yeah, there might be something to this because M and P, they had an interconnection there, didn't they? So first of all, let's consider whether this has to be true. Did it have to be true that any time that N was in the fall, then P would also be in the fall? And actually, yeah, because originally, if N was in the fall, it would have pushed M into the spring, but then if M is in the spring, then P gets pushed back into the fall. So yes, this always had to be true. Anytime N was in the fall, it would have forced P to go into the fall as well. Now, the other side of this, though, is would this ensure that this is going to happen? Now, if we implement a rule that says that anytime you see N in the fall, then P would also go into the fall. Well, the thing is, though, if you put P into the fall, then it would have pushed M into the spring. So yeah, that actually gets the job done as well. This ensures that any time that you trigger this, N goes into the fall, it would force P to go into the fall, which in turn would have forced M to go into the spring. So this gets the job done. It always had to be true. The best answer to question 23 is B. Now, let's just take a quick look at the rest just to kind of see how they work. Answer choice C. If M goes into the spring, then P would go into the fall. Now, that's true because, I mean, M and P were always never together, right? So anytime M was in the spring, then P would have to get pushed into the fall. But this doesn't tell us anything about what would happen to N. This would have no impact on the game at all, in fact, because this is just redundant. We already know that anytime M was in the spring, P was in the fall, just based on this rule alone. This would have zero impact on N. And that's what we're looking to do, right? We need to ensure that anytime M is in the fall, it would have pushed N into the spring. So C is out. D, if N is in the spring, then M would have to go into the spring. Now, that didn't have to be true. I mean, when N was in the spring, that never forced any consequences. So, I mean, that could have happened, to be fair, but they didn't have to happen. That was never a certainty. So this isn't something that always had to be true. Next, answer choice E. If O is in the spring, then N must also be in the spring. Now, to be honest, my first thought here would be, what does this even do for me? Because we're looking for a rule that would ensure that when M is in the fall or when N is in the fall, it would push the other guy to the other side. But this doesn't do any of that, right? Because if O is in the spring, even if you push N into the spring, that still tells you nothing about what happens if one of these guys is in the fall. For the record, though, did that have to be true even? If O was in the spring, then N would also get pushed into the spring? Oh, and actually, to be fair, yes, it did. So this is something that incidentally had to be true. If O is in the spring, it would have pushed K into the spring, but K would have dragged the N into the spring as well. So fine, answer choice E is something that always had to be true, but it doesn't give us the impact that we need. It tells us nothing of what would happen if you triggered that one of M or N is in the fall. So answer choice E is still out, and the best answer to question 23 is B.